Today on The Hookup, I'm going to test out the fully wireless, battery-powered outdoor security cameras from every major manufacturer and tell you which ones are worth your money and which ones you should absolutely avoid. Are you looking for the best battery-powered wireless security camera? Well, for most people, it's going to be this, the Blink XT2. As you'll see in this video, there are a few specific instances where you might be better off with another manufacturer, but for the most part, the Blink XT2 is an amazing value. If you've seen some of my other videos, you may have heard me say that these battery-powered Wi-Fi security cameras are foolish, and if you want real security, you should be wiring your cameras. And while I do sort of still feel this way, I have to admit that I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because when my mom and my sister both asked me to install cameras at their houses while I was visiting for the holidays, I opted for the easy to install, easy to use battery-powered variety. It's true that they're never going to be as good as their wired counterparts, but they do give you about 80% of the functionality for like 1% of the work. Here's the lineup that I'll be testing today, from least expensive to most expensive. First is the Reolink Argus Eco, a more traditional looking security camera that has all the features of the other cameras, but for only $60 per camera. The Reolink comes with free cloud storage for one camera, and then it supports free local storage via microSD. Next is the Blink XT2, a non-rechargeable battery-powered camera that costs around $90 per camera, and it comes with free cloud storage of your last 120 minutes of video. The XT2 is the only camera that I'll be testing today that doesn't use rechargeable batteries, but instead it uses two lithium AA batteries that cost about $1.50 each. So plan on spending between $3 and $6 per year per camera on batteries, depending on how high traffic the area is. After that is the Ring Stick-Up Cam, a rechargeable camera that just got a massive price cut from $179 all the way down to $99. The Ring camera doesn't have any local recording options, and it requires a $3 monthly cloud subscription. The app is pretty neat, and it offers some additional features to try to justify the price, like it lets you share video with your neighbors if they also have a Ring subscription. Then we've got the Arlo Pro 2, a camera with a local base station that ends up costing around $140 per camera. The Arlo does have free cloud storage with local backup, but it performed relatively terribly in all of my tests. It's basically a significantly worse version of the final and most expensive camera that I tested, which is the Eufy Cam E. The Eufy Cam E also has a base station that it uses for local communication and video recording, and it can sync with the Eufy Cloud for free backups and remote viewing of your footage. To figure out which camera is best, I tested them and rated them in a few different categories: ease of installation, battery life, motion detection, video quality, connection range, internet reliance, and of course, price. Since the whole point of these cameras is ease of use, let's talk about installation first. The easiest cameras to install were the Eufy Cam E, Arlo Pro 2, and the Blink XT2. They have 1 or 2 screws each and a universal aiming pivot point. The Arlo and Eufy Cam have magnetic bases to allow them to be easily taken down for recharging, but Eufy Cam does suggest that you use their also included screw mount instead if you're planning on using them outside. The upside to these magnetic mounting systems is it allows you to easily remove your cameras to recharge them when needed, but the obvious downside is that anyone can just reach up and remove them, no tools or force required. The Eufy Cam E has an option to activate a siren if somebody tampers with the camera, but in my experience it was pretty easy to remove the camera without activating the siren, so don't rely on it. It's still a cool idea though. The Ring Stick-Up Cam and the Reolink Argus Eco have a more involved install process that requires you to screw in the mounts and clip on some plastic pieces. These cameras are not designed to easily come down, and as a result, they should be slightly more tamper resistant. Next, let's talk about battery life, a subject that seems pretty simple in theory. The more often your camera is waking up and the more it's recording, the less battery life it will get. However, in practice, the variation in battery life was pretty staggering, even after my attempts to normalize both the motion sensitivity and recording settings for each camera. In my initial test, the Arlo Pro 2 ran out of batteries in just 10 days. So quickly, in fact, that I figured something was just wrong with that camera. So I swapped it out for a second camera, and then its batteries ran out in just 12 days. Even on the most conservative recording options, I was only able to get a maximum of 35 days of battery out of the Arlo, and it missed a huge amount of motion events on those settings. The Reolink had the next shortest battery life, lasting only 26 days. But as you'll see later in this video, I think the real strength of the Reolink camera is installation in remote locations where you can use the optional solar panel accessory, which resulted in the camera actually gaining battery percentage on most days in the Florida sun. The Ring stick-up cam needed recharging after a respectable 55 days, but when I started comparing the motion events with the other cameras, it became apparent that the reason that the batteries lasted so long was that the camera was missing most motion events. The Blink X-T2 batteries don't show a specific percent, but instead they've just read a simple OK since I installed them 62 days ago. Based on other reviews, I don't think they're going to be able to achieve the 2 years of advertised battery life, but most people have reported between 6 months and a year of battery life, depending on how much motion they're exposed to. The Eufy Cam E was the king of battery life. Its battery indicator has 5 green bars when fully charged, and it's only lost a single bar in the same amount of time the Arlo Pro has needed to be recharged 4 times. To be able to conserve their battery, these cameras only turn on when motion is detected, so being able to accurately sense motion is extremely important. To be able to rate each camera's motion detection abilities, I combed through the same 48 hours of clips for each camera, and I classified each event as either an accurate motion event, a late motion event, or a false motion event. And then I used the combined data to determine how many motion events each camera missed. The Blink camera had the most total triggers, with 71 in 48 hours, which is surprising considering it also had a great battery life. It did mean that the Blink camera had the most false triggers, with 18 events registering motion with no significant motion in the clip. This could be annoying when using notifications for motion events, but it also means that it's less likely to miss a motion event. The Blink camera unsurprisingly had the least number of missed events, with only 24 discrepancies from other cameras. On the other end of the spectrum, the Ring camera had only 15 total triggers in 48 hours, which, as I said, probably explains why its battery life was a little bit better than the Reolink and the Arlo. I believe this difference in motion triggering is caused by the fact that the Ring cameras only register motion near the bottom and middle of the image and not the top. That makes some sense if you're trying to just monitor the area directly around the cameras, but it did mean that the Ring camera didn't register 63 of the events that were caught by the other cameras. The Arlo and Reolink had similar middle-of-the-road performances, and the Eufy Cam E did consistently well, missing only 35 events, having 0 false motion triggers, and still having the best battery out of all the cameras. Because these camera units are off most of the time, they detect motion using a low-power PIR sensor. PIR is great, but it's always struggled with detecting motion that's moving towards it. So for my motion detection test, I mounted each camera pointing in the same direction, and I measured 2 types of motion: motion moving across the camera's field of view and motion moving towards the camera. These are the clips for the horizontal movement, and as you can see, they align pretty well with the data from before. The Blink camera did the best job detecting and recording motion, followed closely by the Arlo and the Eufy Cam. The Eufy Cam video is clearly superior to the Arlo's, but both of them are better than what the Ring and the Reolink camera did, which has failed to detect the motion at all. For motion coming towards the camera, all the cameras struggled, but the Blink camera still did the best job detecting the motion, followed by Eufy Cam and then Arlo. The Ring and Reolink cameras did detect the motion, but not until I was just feet from the camera, and they missed the entire 55-foot walk up from the street. So as you can see, reliability of motion recording is a little bit of an issue, and it's one that's been discussed in a lot of other reviews for these wireless cameras. But one thing I could barely find any information about is what happens to your recordings when these cameras lose their connection. I tested the range by loading the live feed from each camera and then moving 5 feet away and repeating the process. Using this method, the Blink X-T2 had the worst range, failing to load the live feed at the end of my driveway, which is around 40 feet away. Next was the Arlo, which cut out at around 50 feet, and then the Eufy Cam E at 55 feet. Then the Ring stopped responding at 75 feet, and last the Reolink lost its connection around 85 feet away. The variation in these ranges is pretty easily explained by how each camera handles its connection, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The Arlo and the Eufy Cam systems connect directly to the wireless signal that's generated by their base stations. This means that the base station needs to be in a central location for all of your camera placements, regardless of how strong your Wi-Fi signal is. And this explains why the two systems performed relatively poorly, even though my Wi-Fi signal is extremely strong. The Blink camera was the first to fail to load a live stream, but oddly enough, when I checked the app later, the Blink cameras kept recording throughout the entire range of the tests. This is because the Blink Hub is not really a hub, but it's actually just used for activating the live stream, and communication with the cloud is done by directly connecting to Wi-Fi, meaning that even though the camera couldn't communicate with the hub for a live view, it was still able to send its recorded footage to the cloud. The Ring and Reolink cameras don't have hubs at all, and so they connect directly to the Wi-Fi. And in my test, that gave them the longest range, with the Reolink having a slight advantage due to the fact that it has an external directional antenna. This was a really long-winded explanation of this test, but here's why it's important for your situation. If you're installing these cameras in a location that already has a really good Wi-Fi coverage, then the Blink, Ring, and Reolink cameras are your best option. However, if you're going to be using them in a house with poor Wi-Fi, like maybe the kind that you got from your service provider, then the Arlo and Eufy Cam systems are better since they communicate directly with their base, and they won't require you to upgrade your Wi-Fi. The obvious next question is what happens to your video recordings when there is no connection? So to test this, I brought all the cameras over to a friend's house for the night to see what recordings they would have when they regained their connection on the next day. Pretty unsurprisingly, the only camera that was able to record while disconnected from Wi-Fi was the Reolink Argus, since it has the option to record directly to the micro SD card that's in the camera. I wondered if these cameras might have some kind of internal temporary memory to record at least the last few motion events in case of a wireless outage. But that doesn't appear to be the case, as none of the other cameras had any footage from outside of my Wi-Fi coverage area. This is an important consideration if you experience frequent power outages, because even though the cameras themselves are battery powered, the only one that will actually record when the power is out is the Reolink Argus. Most people don't have frequent power outages, but lots of people have flaky internet connections. So to test out what happens without an internet connection, I used my firewall to block off all the cameras and their hubs from the internet. As I said, I was trying to simulate an internet outage, so I allowed all local traffic, just not the internet. In this case, the Blink, Ring, and Arlo failed to make recordings at all, and they couldn't connect to the live view. The Reolink Argus and Eufy Cam E were both able to record locally and load the live view as long as I was on the same local network. If your internet connection goes out, you should opt for cameras with local recording, like the Reolink Argus and the Eufy Cam E. You should definitely be aware that you won't get any recordings from the Blink, Ring, or Arlo when your internet is down. So it's time for my final verdict, and as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I think that the Blink X-T2 is probably the best camera for 80% of people. If you don't experience frequent power or internet outages and you'll be able to place all of your cameras within 100 feet of the sync module, then the Blink X-T2 has a great battery life, solid motion detection, and superb video quality for a really great price. However, if you do experience occasional internet outages, the next best camera system was absolutely the Eufy Cam E, which performed just as well as the Blink X-T2 in most areas except for price. I really wanted to make the Eufy Cam E my first pick, but it's almost twice the cost of the Blink cameras and it just isn't that much better. If you have frequent outages, either power or internet, or you need to mount your camera in a remote or difficult to reach location, then the best option for a battery powered camera is the Reolink Argus Eco with the optional solar attachment. The Argus Eco's battery will last indefinitely as long as it gets a decent amount of sunlight, and it will never miss a recording due to connectivity since it can record directly to its internal SD card. While I enjoyed the Ring app and it was fun to be able to see events around my neighborhood, I really don't think it justified the $3 a month subscription fee, and the complete reliance on the cloud was really disappointing. It missed more motion events than any other camera, and while the video quality was pretty good, it was often late to start recording. Even with the recent price reduction, I can't recommend the Ring cameras. Last is the Arlo Pro 2, which was laughably bad. Not only was the battery life an absolute joke, but the video quality was unacceptably bad for such an expensive camera. Despite Arlo's base station, it still has no local viewing or recording options, and it's completely non-functional without an internet connection. When you plug in a USB drive to the base station, it lets you back up your recordings locally, but the flow goes from the camera to the base station to the cloud, and then back to the USB on the base station. So there's lots of points of failure in there. Moral of the story, just don't buy them. If you've had a significantly different experience with these cameras, or I missed something important, make sure to let me know down in the comments. Thank you to all my awesome patrons over at Patreon for continuing to support my channel. If you're interested in supporting my channel, please check out the links down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching The Hookup.